Hey, welcome, it's Cassie. Today I'm going to show you how to make some realistic looking fake chocolate chunk cookies and fake chocolate chip cookies. So for this project, I'm going to use Crayola air dry clay. Since I'm making 2 cookies for this video, I grabbed a pretty good sized chunk. I'm going to just condition it. Because I want both of my cookies to be the same size, I'm rolling it into a ball and then I'm gonna just cut that in half. So I just have my clay blade here and I'm just gonna cut that right in half. And then I'm gonna roll each of these into a ball. Then we need to make it in the cookie shape, so I'm just gonna press down with my hand and get it to the thickness that I want for my cookie. And you can leave it a little bit thicker because when we add the texture, it's going to kind of flatten it out a little bit more. So you don't need to get it super thin or like the perfect thickness that you want it, because it'll thin out just a bit more as we texture it here. So to add the texture, I'm just going to use my toothbrush and I'm going to go all across the top and the sides and pressing down like harder in some spots to get those kind of like bigger dips in the cookie. You can take your toothpick and just make some lines coming up from the sides in all different directions and just give it that realistic crackly cookie look. We'll start with the chocolate chip one first. So I'm just going to grab a little bit more of my clay and then I'm going to roll it into a snake. And this will help me get my chocolate chips all the same size. So then I'm just going to cut this into little pieces that are all about the same size. Okay, so I'm just going to take one of my little chunks and I'm going to start pressing it against the surface and then pinching the top. And just keep turning it and pinching the top and pressing it against the surface. And there you have little chocolate chip. So I'm just going to make, it's probably easier if you roll it into a ball first because you have this weird shape. And if it starts getting square, just press in those little edges there and then go back to what you're doing. Okay, so I'm going to grab my cookie and then I'm going to take a toothpick and I'm just going to make some little holes where I would like to put my chocolate chips. And you can make it bigger, like make it nice and big so that the chocolate chip fits in there, and then we'll close up the hole after. So you'll want to make these so that they're like not all facing the same way. So Like we can put this one in straight up like that. And then just kind of press this around, but you don't want it to the chocolate chip and the cookie to necessarily mold together. So, you know, press it up against there, but don't like smush it together. I hope that makes sense. Otherwise, the cookie and the chocolate chip just kind of start looking like one thing. So we can do this one upside down. And then let's do one right on the edge here. We can do this one kind of like sideways. So now for the ones that are standing straight up, I'm going to kind of press down on the tip because they kind of get that melty look. You don't want them to look like they're still cold. Okay, so we'll put that one aside, and then we need to do the chocolate chunk one. So for that one, just grab a small piece of clay. I'm going to roll this out into a snake, but I'm going to keep it a little bit on the thicker side. And then I'm going to take my clay blade and I'm just going to trim off the edges so that I can get like a square-ish shaped log. Trim all four sides. And then I'm going to cut this into chunks, but I'm not going to cut them all the same. So like this one I'm making like that shape. And then I'm going to do some kind of to an angle like this because the chocolate chunks are like different shapes and sizes and things. So be more random with this. Okay, and then same thing, we're just going to make holes and put the chocolate chunks in there. And having these all different shapes makes this look more realistic. So that's why I said make it kind of random when you're cutting the shapes. And you'll want to make sure that these stick out of the cookie somewhat. Okay, so we have our chocolate chip one and our chocolate chunk one. So now you'll want to let these dry overnight so you can paint them easier. So I have a couple here that I already made up and let dry so that we could paint them. So I'm gonna mix some antique white and some yellow. Not too much on the yellow, just like a drop. You can always add more if you need to, but once it's in there, you can't take it out. So, and then just paint your cookie. It doesn't matter if you go on the chocolate chips, you can cover that up later. Just make sure you get down into those crevices where you've textured the cookie so that it doesn't show the clay color. So once your yellow paint has dried, then we're going to give it the baked look. So for that, I'm going to use my go-to Territorial Beige. Just do a drop or two of each of these colors. I'm going to do 2 drops of each since I have 2 cookies here. And then just take all the excess paint off of your brush. We're going to dry brush this onto the cookie, so make sure your brush doesn't have too much paint. And then just go across. So remember, like, the edge of cookies usually is a little bit darker. So there's that one. I'm going to do the other one really quick. Okay, and then we need to paint the chocolate chunks and the chocolate chips. So there are 2 colors you can use for your chocolate chips, chocolate chunks. Melted chocolate or burnt umber. So the burnt umber is going to give you like a darker chocolate look, and then this will give you more of like a milk chocolate look. I'm going to use melted chocolate because when I take my photos, the burnt umber turns out almost black looking, but the burnt umber looks really realistic too. Either one will look great. So I'm just going to put some in a cup, and then I'm going to add some gloss Mod Podge. I'm going to do about half paint and half Mod Podge, so equal parts of those. And then that'll give me like the nice glossy look, because chocolate chips look more glossy when, like, after they're baked and they get kind of melty. Okay, then I'm just going to paint all of my chocolate chips and chocolate chunks. So you'll probably have to do 2 coats of the chocolate paint. And when you're painting these, make sure you get on the sides too, because that's what's going to make it look more realistic. If you're just painting across the top, it doesn't look as realistic. So there we have chocolate chunk and chocolate chip. Thank you so much for watching. You have no idea how much I appreciate your support of me and my channel. You're the best, and I will see you in the next video.